In today's lesson, we are going to be focusing on the meaning of a quadratic equation, the general form of a quadratic equation, and the meaning of the root of a quadratic equation, and how do we find the root of a quadratic equation. A quadratic equation refers to an equation whose degree is 2. This implies that the highest exponent of a quadratic equation is 2. That is, the highest degree of a quadratic equation is 2. And don't forget that the numbers of exponents tell us the numbers of roots of an equation. Therefore, since a quadratic equation has 2 as its exponent, therefore we can only have 2 roots. The general form of a quadratic equation can be represented as ax squared plus bx plus c, where xi is the variable of the quadratic equation and a is the coefficient of x squared, that is our first term, and the second term is the coefficient of x, that is b, and the constant term, that term that doesn't have any variable, that is the constant term, and the constant term is regarded as c. For example, given the quadratic equation 3x squared plus 5x minus 2 is equals to 0, the first term here is 3, which is the coefficient of x squared, that's 3. The second term is the coefficient of x, that is b. b is equals to 4. And the last term, which is the constant term, is c. And c in this equation is what? Minus 2. Don't forget that these two, the minus sign belongs to these two. So the c constant term in this case is what? Minus 2. Now, let us proceed to what is meant by the root of a quadratic equation. The root of a quadratic equation refers to the values of variable x that satisfy this equation. This is also known as zeros of a quadratic equation. Now, when we talk about the variable in a quadratic equation, don't forget that when we talk about variable can take any value, and the variable in a quadratic equation can be represented by any letters, either b, a, c, any letters. We can use any letters to represent the variables in a quadratic equation. And after getting the root of a quadratic equation, by substituting the root of this equation into the same quadratic equation, when we result to 0, that means that equation, that variable satisfy the quadratic equation. In that case, the value is known as the zeros of that quadratic equation. And when we talk about the root of a quadratic equation, we are also talking about the solution to the quadratic equation. Now, how do we find the root of a quadratic equation? There are 4 main methods, but we are going to be focusing on the 3 major aspects, which are the factorization method, the general quadratic formula, and the completing the square method. The first example here, we have find the root of the quadratic equation x squared minus 7x plus 10 equals to 0. And the second question is 2x squared plus 5x minus 7 equals to 0. Now, how do we find the root of this equation? The first step is to identify a, b, and c. Don't forget that a is the coefficient of x squared. The coefficient of x squared in this example is 1. So a is 1 and b is the coefficient of x, which is the second term. So in that case, I'm going to have b is equals to, what is the coefficient of x in this equation? The coefficient of x is minus 7. So in that case, I'm going to have b is equals to minus 7. Now, the constant term is the c. So the constant term in this equation is plus 10. I can also write c is equals to 10. Now, after identifying our a, b, and c, the next step is to take the product of a and c. Don't forget that our a is equals to 1 and c is equals to 10. So a multiplied by c is equals to 1 multiplied by 10 is equals to 10. So the product of a and c is 10. After taking the product of a and c, the next step is to think of two numbers such that when you add these two numbers together, you are going to get b. You are going to get b. And when you multiply these two numbers together, you are going to get 10. Think of two numbers such that when you multiply these two numbers together, you are going to get 10, and when you add these two numbers together, you are going to get your second term, which is minus 7. In that case, let us think. What are the two numbers that we can add together that is going to give us minus 7? And when we multiply these two numbers together, we are going to get 10. Let's check. 5 and 2. If we take the product of 5 and 2, we are going to get 10. 5 multiplied by 2 is equals to 10. This is the 10. But when we add 5 plus 2, 5 plus 2 is equals to 7. But in our question, in the equation that they gave us, the second term is not 7. The second term is minus 7. Therefore, 5 and 2 is not going to work. Now, let us think of another number. Let us make use of minus 5 and minus 2. Minus 5 and minus 2. Let us take the product of minus 5 and minus 2. Minus 5 multiplied by minus 2. Minus 5 times minus 2, that is 10. Don't forget that minus multiplied by minus will be equals to positive. Minus negative multiplied by negative will be equals to positive. So 5 times 2 is 10. So that is positive 10. Now, let us take the sum of these two numbers, which is minus 5 and minus 2, to see if this will give us b, which is minus 7. So let's check. Minus 5 plus minus 2. Minus 5 plus minus 2. Minus 5 plus minus 2, that is plus times minus is minus. So I'm going to have minus 5 minus 2. Minus 5 minus 2, that is minus 7. So I'm going to have minus 7 here. Therefore, the two numbers such that when we multiply these two numbers together, we are going to get 10. And when we add these two numbers together, we are going to get the second term b, which is equals to what? Minus 7. Those two numbers are minus 5 and minus 2. Therefore, the next step is to replace the second term, which is minus 7, with minus 5x and minus 2x. So therefore, the quadratic equation becomes like this. I'm going to have x squared minus, instead of minus 7x, I'm going to put minus 5x minus 2x. So minus 5x minus 2x plus 10 is equals to 0. So this equation is also the same thing as this. It's just that I've already factorized the second term, which is minus 7. I've already factorized it. Instead of minus 7, I've already put minus 5x minus 2x. And if I add this together, I'm going to get minus 7x. Now, let us proceed to factorize. I'm going to divide this equation into two parts. In that case, I'm going to have one part here and another part. That is x squared minus 5x, that is one part, and minus 2x plus 10, that is another part. Now, what is common to x squared and minus 5x? X is the only thing that is common to x squared minus 5x. So I'm going to have x into bracket, what is common? X minus 5. That is, what is common to x squared and minus 5x is x. So I factorize x out. In that case, when I multiply this bracket with x, I'm still going to get this bracket. That is why this method is known as factorization method. Now, let us look at the second part of the equation. What is common to minus 2x plus 10? What is common to minus 2x plus 10? What is common is minus 2. So in that case, we are going to have minus 2 multiplied by x minus 5. Because you must make sure that at the end of the day, if you multiply what you factorize here, if you multiply it with this bracket, you must get what is in the bracket. And I want to tell you an it. What you have here must be equals to what you have here. That is, what is in this bracket, when you factorize this bracket out, must be equals to what will be inside this bracket also. So this will be equals to what? 0. Now, the next thing is that since this bracket is equals to this bracket, I'm going to take one out of this. So I'm going to have x minus 2 and x minus 5 is equals to 0. So I have factorized this equation. Let us look for the zeros of the equation, which is the root of the equation. Don't forget. So in that case, I'm going to have x minus 2 is equals to 0, and x minus 5 is equals to 0. X is equals to 2 and x is equals to 5. So the zeros of the equation x squared minus 7x plus 10 is equals to 0 is 2 and 5. Now let us check. If I substitute any of the value of this variable x into this equation, if I got 0, then this equation satisfies this, these values, the value of this variable satisfies this equation. Let's try with 2. Let's try to substitute 2 into this equation. So I'm going to have 2 squared minus 7 into bracket 2 plus 10. 4 minus 14 plus 10. Minus 14 plus 10. So 4 minus 14, that is minus 10. Minus 10 plus 10 equals to 0. So when I substitute the variable x equals to 2 into this quadratic equation, I got 0. Therefore, 2 satisfies this equation. Now let us check 5. When x is equals to 5, will this equation be equals to 0? Now let's check in this place. 5 squared minus 7 into bracket 5 plus 10 is equals to 0. 5 times 5 is 25. 5 squared is 25 minus 5 times 7, that is 35 plus 10. So 25 minus 35, that is minus 10. Minus 10 plus 10 is equals to 0. So both of the value of the variable x equals to 2 and x equals to 5 satisfy this above equation. So this is the zeros of the quadratic equation x squared minus 7x plus 10.